how do you pick up the pieces and put your life back together when it's not turning out the way you thought it would.
Marie Tillman, wife of war hero Pat Tillman, has finally revealed the details of the letter he wrote to her before his death, and it's heartbreaking. This letter tells the story of his motivation to fight in Afghanistan and explains the shady cover-up about his death. Let's get right into it. The tragedy that changed everything for the Tillmans. In the quiet sanctuary of her Seattle home on the night of April 22, 2004, Marie Tillman sat huddled in the corner of her bedroom, her knees drawn to her chin, sweatpants soaked with tears that seemed to flow endlessly from a well of grief so deep it threatened to consume her entirely. Just hours earlier, uniformed soldiers had arrived at her workplace with news that would shatter her world completely. Her husband, Pat Tillman, the former NFL star who had walked away from a multi-million-dollar career to serve his country as an Army Ranger, had been killed in Afghanistan. But this isn't just another story about a fallen soldier. This is the story of a letter, a just-in-case letter that Pat had written before his deployment. A letter that Marie had never opened, never wanted to open, and had described as a black hole that could unravel her entire existence if she dared to break its seal. To understand the profound impact of this letter, we must first understand the extraordinary man who wrote it and the equally remarkable woman who would carry his legacy forward. Pat Tillman was born on November 6, 1976, in San Jose, California, to Mary and Patrick Tillman, the eldest of 3 boys. From his earliest days, Pat displayed a fierce competitive streak and natural leadership that would define every aspect of his life, from the football fields of his youth to the treacherous mountains of Afghanistan, where he would ultimately make the ultimate sacrifice. Growing up in a tight-knit family, Pat defied every expectation placed upon him. At Leland High School from 1990 to 1994, he defied expectations of his small stature to become a football star, leading his team to a Central Coast Division I championship. His relentless drive and insatiable curiosity earned him a scholarship to Arizona State University, where he would excel not just as an athlete, but as a scholar and a thinker. At ASU, he excelled as a linebacker, leading the Sun Devils to an undefeated 1996 season and a Rose Bowl appearance in 1997. But Pat's achievements extended far beyond the gridiron. Academically, he graduated summa cum laude in 3.5 years with a degree in marketing, earning accolades like the Clyde B. Smith Academic Award and Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year. This was a young man who approached everything in life with the same methodical intensity, the same unwavering commitment to excellence that would later characterize his military service. When the Arizona Cardinals drafted Tillman in 1998, he quickly established himself as a force to be reckoned with in the NFL. He became a standout safety, setting a franchise record with 224 tackles in 2000 and turning down a $9 million offer from the St. Louis Rams out of loyalty to Arizona. His career stats included 340 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 3 forced fumbles over 60 games. But numbers alone could never capture the essence of Pat Tillman. His loyalty, his integrity, his fierce independence, and his constant questioning of the world around him. It was during this time of professional success that Pat met the love of his life, Marie Ugenti, his high school sweetheart from San Jose. Their relationship, which began in high school in San Jose, California, was marked by letter writing, especially during times of separation, such as when they attended different colleges. Marie at the University of California, Pat at Arizona State University. This history of intimate written communication would make the just-in-case letter a natural, if somber, continuation of their deeply personal connection through the written word. Then came September 11, 2001, a date that would change the trajectory of American history, and more personally, the trajectory of Pat and Marie Tillman's lives forever.
Specifically about September 11th just jarred him.
Yeah, I don't know specifically what it was. I think that it's now been a while, but if we think back to that time in our country, that there were a lot of people who sort of stopped and thought about their lives and what they were doing with them, and reevaluated and sort of refocused into a direction that felt more meaningful to them at the time, and that really was what it was for him.
Watching the Twin Towers fall, he felt a profound sense of duty, telling NBC News, "My great-grandfather was at Pearl Harbor, and a lot of my family has gone and fought in wars, and I really haven't done a damn thing as far as laying myself on the line like that." The attacks made his NFL career feel trivial, and he sought a deeper purpose, a way to contribute something meaningful to his country in its hour of need. Tillman's decision to enlist in the U.S. Army in May 2002, alongside his brother Kevin, was sparked by the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. This wasn't a decision made in haste or born of momentary passion. He rejected a $3.6 million, $6 million in 2024, Cardinals contract to join the Army Rangers for a base pay of $1,290 a month. Tillman was not motivated by fame. He declined media, interviews, and multi-million-dollar book and movie deals to avoid appearing self-serving. His journal entries reveal a desire to challenge himself and serve his country, inspired by a family history of military service and a belief that his comfortable life demanded greater sacrifice. This was a man driven by an internal compass that pointed not toward personal gain but toward service, sacrifice, and a deep-seated belief that with privilege comes responsibility. He and Kevin completed basic training and the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program in 2002, joining the 2nd Ranger Battalion in Fort Lewis, Washington. But even as Pat prepared for military service, his relationship with Marie deepened and evolved. They married shortly after his enlistment, and it was during this period of preparation and anticipation that Pat would write the letter that would become central to Marie's journey through grief and beyond. The letter was not the first instance of written communication between Pat and Marie. Their relationship had been sustained through correspondence during college years, making written communication a natural and intimate part of their connection. But this letter was different. It carried the weight of possibility, the shadow of mortality, and the profound love of a man who understood that his chosen path might lead him away from the woman he cherished above all else. In 2003, before his deployment to Afghanistan, Pat wrote the just-in-case letter to Marie, a common practice among soldiers facing the uncertainties of war. He placed the letter on their bedroom dresser during a period of leave, where it remained sealed, described by Marie as a black hole that could unravel her stable life if opened. For Marie, that letter represented everything she feared about Pat's decision to serve. It was a tangible reminder of the possibility that haunted her every waking moment, that the man she loved, the man who had become the center of her universe, might not return from the dangerous mission he felt compelled to undertake. Marie noted that the letter was written hastily, reflecting Pat's struggle to articulate his thoughts under the weight of his potential death. As 2003 turned into 2004, Pat's deployment to Afghanistan brought new challenges and revelations. Tillman's independent mindset and intellectual curiosity shaped his worldview. He read voraciously, took graduate history classes at ASU, and planned to meet anti-war thinker Noam Chomsky, reflecting his openness to questioning narratives. Deployed to Iraq in 2003 for Operation Iraqi Freedom and later to Afghanistan for Operation Enduring Freedom, he served with distinction but grew critical of the Iraq War, reportedly calling it fucking illegal. These weren't the words of a man blindly following orders or accepting military narratives without question. Pat Tillman was evolving, thinking, questioning, and grappling with the complex realities of modern warfare and American foreign policy. His journals from this period reveal a thoughtful, conflicted individual who maintained his commitment to service while wrestling with doubts about the missions he was asked to undertake. But on that fateful day in April 2004, all of Pat's questions, all of his intellectual wrestling with the complexities of war and duty would come to a tragic and controversial end. On April 22, 2004, at age 27, Tillman was killed in Afghanistan's Khost province. The circumstances of his death would later become the subject of intense scrutiny, multiple investigations, and bitter controversy that would consume his family's quest for truth for years to come. A letter of love and hope. The words on Pat Tillman's letter are more important than he would have ever imagined they'd be. While the full text of the letter remains private, as Marie has not published it in its entirety, excerpts and descriptions provide insight into its content and tone. The letter was handwritten, described as a mess of ink and scribbles, of words and sentences crossed out, revealing Pat's thought process as he grappled with the challenge of expressing his love, hopes, and final wishes while imagining his own death. But Pat's letter wasn't a polished piece of prose designed to comfort or inspire in the traditional sense. The letter was not a polished piece of prose, but raw and authentic, reflecting Pat's personality as a thoughtful, nuanced individual who valued honesty over perfection. Marie noted that it contained sudden words of love and encouragement, serving as a final expression of his desire for her to move forward without him. In the letter, Pat acknowledged the sheer impossibility of what he was attempting to do. Pat acknowledged the difficulty of summarizing their decade-long relationship and his love for her, writing, "It's difficult to summarize 10 years together, my love for you, my hopes for your future, and pretend to be dead all at the same time. I simply cannot put all this into words. I'm not ready, willing, or able." This vulnerability underscored the letter's emotional weight and its role as a lifeline for Marie after his death. But even as Marie struggled with the overwhelming nature of Pat's final request, she began to understand that this letter was more than just a goodbye. It was a gift, carefully crafted by a man who understood her better than anyone else in the world. The letter became a touchstone for Marie in the weeks and months that followed, as she navigated overwhelming grief and public attention due to Pat's high-profile status as an NFL player turned soldier. She described it as a gift that gave her strength, noting in an NBC interview, "I don't know if he knew what was doing when he left that letter, but it was really a gift for me to know that it was okay." The letter's presence became a constant reminder of Pat's love and his desire for her to find a way forward, even as she struggled with the loss of her soulmate. But Marie's journey through grief would be complicated by revelations that would emerge in the weeks and months following Pat's death. Revelations that would shake her faith in the very institution institutions her husband had died serving. What Marie didn't know in those first dark days of mourning was that the official story of Pat's death, the heroic narrative of a former NFL star dying while leading his men to safety under enemy fire, was a carefully constructed fiction. The U.S. Army initially claimed Tillman was killed by enemy fire, a narrative that aligned with the heroic image they sought to project. This story was propagated through media accounts and reinforced by the posthumous awarding of a Silver Star, with the citation falsely claiming Tillman died under devastating enemy fire. However, within days, military officials, including then Brigadier General Stanley McChrystal, suspected friendly fire. McChrystal sent a P4 memo on April 29, 2004 to top officials, including General John Abizaid, urging them to avoid referencing enemy fire in public statements, yet the false narrative persisted for over a month. The Pentagon notified the Tillman family on May 28, 2004, that his death was due to fratricide, but only after significant public and media pressure. This revelation would add another layer of complexity to Marie's grief. Not only was she mourning the loss of her husband, but she was also grappling with the realization that the circumstances of his death had been deliberately misrepresented by the very institution he had dedicated his life to serving. The heroic narrative that had been crafted around Pat's death, while emotionally comforting in some ways, was built on a foundation of lies and deception. The cover-up would prove to be systematic and extensive. The cover-up surrounding Tillman's death deepened his family's distrust in the military and government. Specialist Brian O'Neill, the last soldier to see Tillman alive, testified in 2007 that he was ordered by superiors not to disclose the friendly fire incident to the Tillman family. Kevin Tillman, who was in a convoy behind Pat but did not witness the incident, testified before Congress that the military's deception was intended to deceive a whole nation and distract from setbacks in Iraq, such as the Fallujah siege and the Abu Ghraib scandal.
What are your thoughts about this? Why?
Well, I don't think they're very honorable people. I know they were lying. I mean, and I think that, Pat and I are talking about, we feel that there could have been something else that happened to Pat, but we can't prove it. Every bit of evidence has been destroyed.
The family's pain was compounded by the realization that evidence had been deliberately destroyed. Mary Tillman, Pat's mother, echoed this sentiment, describing the deception as horrific and emphasizing that the government's actions were a disservice to the nation. She pursued years of investigations, uncovering evidence that the military destroyed Tillman's uniform, body armor, and notebooks to conceal the truth, and that Army attorneys congratulated themselves for keeping investigators at bay.
He did oppose the war in Iraq, and he was actually somewhat vocal about that to us and to some members of his unit. And we did think about that, of course, because we felt like we were being lied to. It occurred to us that could he possibly have been killed on purpose? And in the book, because it's written in the present tense, you're obviously, the reader's obviously aware that we had thought about that.
For Marie, learning about the cover-up meant processing not just the loss of her husband, but also the betrayal of the institution he had served with such dedication and honor. The letter that had become her lifeline took on even greater significance in this context. It represented not just Pat's final thoughts, but his authentic voice, untainted by the military's propaganda machine. Despite the overwhelming nature of her grief and the shocking revelations about the circumstances of Pat's death, Marie began to find strength in her husband's final request. The letter's influence extended far beyond the immediate aftermath of Pat's death. Gradually, she began to understand what Pat had been asking of her and why. It was many years before I realized this final request was a gift, highlighting the gradual process of finding meaning in Pat's words. The journey toward understanding and acceptance would be long and difficult, marked by setbacks and breakthroughs, moments of despair and sudden clarity. As Marie navigated the complex landscape of grief, she began to recognize that living, truly living, in the way Pat had asked her to do, meant more than simply surviving. It meant honoring his memory through action, through service, through the pursuit of something greater than her own pain and loss. Marie also used the letter as a foundation for broader impact. She created a website, justinCaseLetter.com, to showcase historical just-in-case letters and allow others to write and store their own in a digital vault. This initiative reflects her desire to help others facing loss, drawing from the comfort she found in Pat's letter. But perhaps the most significant way Marie chose to honor Pat's memory and fulfill his request to live was through the establishment of the Pat Tillman Foundation. Additionally, Marie co-founded the Pat Tillman Foundation in 2000 2004, which provides educational scholarships and leadership programs for veterans, active service members, and their spouses, channeling Pat's legacy of service into positive action. The letter's influence is evident in her commitment to this work, as she found solace in doing something in Pat's memory that was benefiting other people. The foundation became Marie's way of transforming her grief into something constructive, something that would extend Pat's impact far beyond his own life and death. It represented the practical application of his final request, not just to live, but to live with purpose, to live in service of others, to live in a way that would honor his memory while creating something genuinely beneficial for the world. As Marie threw herself into the work of building the foundation and supporting other veterans and military families, she began to discover what Pat had perhaps understood when he wrote those three simple words: that sometimes the greatest act of love is not holding on to the past, but embracing the future with all its possibilities for service, growth, and positive impact. The letter had given her permission to grieve, but more importantly, it had given her permission to heal, to grow, and to become something more than she had been before, not in spite of her loss, but because of it, and in honor of the man who had loved her enough to ask her to keep living, even when living felt impossible. The message of hope. By 2012, 8 years after that devastating night when she first read Pat's letter, Marie Tillman had transformed from a widow overwhelmed by grief into a powerful advocate for veterans and military families. Her journey toward healing and purpose culminated in the publication of her memoir, The Letter: My Journey Through Love, Loss, and Life, a deeply personal account of how her husband's final words had guided her through the darkest period of her life and into a future she could never have imagined. Marie's memoir, The Letter: My Journey Through Love, Loss, and Life, published in 2012, centers on how the letter helped her process her grief and rebuild her life. In the book, she details her journey from meeting Pat as teenagers, through their marriage, his enlistment, and the devastating loss that followed. The letter served as a catalyst for her healing, encouraging her to embrace solitude, self-awareness, and integrity as she moved forward. The memoir represented more than just Marie's personal story. It was a testament to the power of love to transcend death, a roadmap for others navigating profound loss, and a celebration of a complex, nuanced man who had been reduced to simplistic symbols by both supporters and critics of American military policy. Critics and reviewers, such as John Krakauer, praised the letter as a heartrending elegy for an extraordinary man and an indispensable roadmap through the wilderness of bereavement. Maria Shriver noted Marie's courage in sharing her journey, suggesting it offers comfort to others facing loss. But Marie's transformation extended far beyond the publication of her book. By 2012, Marie had remarried Joe Shenton and welcomed their son, Mac Patrick, in January of that year, living in Chicago with Joe's 3 sons from a previous marriage. She described motherhood as symbolic of how far I've come, reflecting the fulfillment of Pat's request to live. This new chapter in Marie's life represented the complete fulfillment of Pat's final request. She had not only survived the devastating loss of her soulmate, but she had rebuilt her life in a way that honored his memory while creating new possibilities for love, family, and service. The fact that she named her son Mac Patrick, incorporating both her new life with Joe and her enduring connection to Pat, demonstrated her ability to integrate her past and present into a coherent, meaningful whole. The letter's enduring impact is evident in her continued work with the Pat Tillman Foundation, where she serves as board chair, and her advocacy for veterans and military families. Under Marie's leadership, the foundation had grown from an idea born of grief into a substantial organization, making tangible differences in the lives of veterans, active service members, and their families across the country. The Pat Tillman Foundation's work extends far beyond simple financial assistance. It seeks to cultivate the next generation of leaders among the veteran and military community, providing not just scholarships, but mentorship, networking opportunities, and a platform for service that reflects Pat's own commitment to making a positive impact on the world. The Pat Tillman Foundation, established in 2004, continues his legacy, supporting veterans and military spouses through scholarships and leadership programs. Marie's advocacy work also extended to protecting Pat's legacy from political exploitation. She understood better than anyone that her husband was a complex, thinking individual who resisted simple categorization. The letter not only shaped Marie's personal journey, but also contributed to the public narrative around Pat Tillman. Pat became an icon of patriotism and sacrifice, though Marie has emphasized that he was a complex, nuanced individual who resisted simplistic labels. She has guarded his legacy against politicization, notably in 2017, when she spoke out against the use of Pat's image in NFL boycott debates, stating, "I can't say how Pat would have felt about race in the United States today or kneeling during the national anthem, but I can say that he would have engaged in thoughtful and respectful discourse." The letter, in its private intimacy contrasts with the public's attempts to define Pat, reinforcing Marie's portrayal of him as a flesh and blood man rather than a symbol. This protection of Pat's authentic legacy represents one of the most important ways Marie has honored both her husband's memory and his final request to live. Rather than allowing others to define what Pat stood for, she has consistently presented him as he truly was, a thinking, questioning, evolving individual who made the ultimate sacrifice in service of his country while maintaining his intellectual integrity and capacity for critical thought. The contrast between the public Pat Tillman, the simplified, politicized symbol, and the private Pat Tillman revealed in the letter illustrates the profound impact of Marie's decision to share her story. However, the letter also exists within the broader context of Pat Tillman's controversial death and the military's initial cover-up, which claimed he was killed in an enemy ambush. This added a layer of public scrutiny to Marie's grief as she navigated media attention and investigations while clinging to the letter's private solace. The contrast between the letter's intimacy and the public's fascination with Pat's story underscores the tension between personal loss and public legacy, a theme Marie explores in her memoir and public statements. Marie's ability to navigate this tension, maintaining the privacy and sanctity of her relationship with Pat while sharing enough of their story to help others and protect his legacy, demonstrates the wisdom and strength she developed through her journey of grief and healing. The letter had not only given her permission to live, but had also provided her with the foundation for becoming a leader, advocate, and voice for others facing similar challenges. The broader impact of Marie's work extends far beyond individual recipients of Pat Tillman Foundation scholarships or readers of her memoir. Her example of transforming devastating loss into purposeful action has inspired countless others facing their own dark nights of the soul. She has shown that grief need not be the end of the story, but can instead be the beginning of a new chapter dedicated to service, love, and positive impact.
You know, I think that you just have to sort of be gentle with yourself when you're going through something difficult and realize that, as cliche as it is, that time does help.
This wisdom, hard-won through her own experience of profound loss, has become central to Marie's message to others navigating grief and trauma. The letter's significance also lies in its universality. While Pat and Marie's story is unique in its particular circumstances, the NFL career, the military service, the friendly fire incident, the cover-up, the core elements of their experience are deeply human and widely relatable. Love, loss, grief, healing, and the search for meaning and purpose in the face of tragedy are experiences that transcend specific circumstances and speak to fundamental aspects of the human condition. The letter's raw, imperfect nature mirrors the complexity of grief, making it relatable to readers who have experienced similar losses. This authenticity, the crossed-out words, the struggle to find adequate language, the acknowledgement of the impossibility of the task, makes the letter more powerful than any polished eulogy or carefully crafted final message could have been. It captures the reality of human struggle, the messiness of real emotion, and the profound difficulty of saying goodbye to someone you love more than life itself. Pat Tillman's just-in-case letter to Marie Tillman is a poignant artifact of their love and his foresight, serving as both a personal lifeline and a catalyst for Marie's journey through grief and purpose. Written in 2003 and opened in April 2004 after Pat's death, the letter's key message, "I ask that you live," guided Marie through her darkest moments and inspired her to establish the Pat Tillman Foundation and share her story in the letter. While its full contents remain private, the excerpts reveal a raw, heartfelt plea that reflects Pat's complex character and deep bond with Marie. The letter's legacy endures in Marie's resilience, her advocacy for veterans, and her commitment to honoring Pat's life through action, making it a powerful testament to love, loss, and the courage to move forward. In a world often focused on grand gestures and dramatic moments, the quiet power of Pat's simple request, "I ask that you live," stands as a reminder that sometimes the most profound truths can be expressed in the simplest words, and that the greatest acts of love are those that give others permission to grow, heal, and find their own paths forward. As we reflect on this remarkable story of love, loss, and renewal, we're reminded that our own letters to those we love, whether written in anticipation of deployment, illness, or simply the uncertain future that faces us all, have the power to transcend our physical presence and continue to guide, comfort, and inspire long after we're gone. Pat Tillman's letter to his wife stands as a testament to the enduring power of love expressed in written words and to the extraordinary capacity of the human spirit to transform even the deepest losses into sources of strength, service, and hope for the future. The story continues today through Marie's ongoing work, through the lives changed by the Pat Tillman Foundation, and through every person inspired by this tale of love's ability to transcend death and transform grief into purpose. Pat's final request that Marie live has been fulfilled not just through her survival, but through her thriving, her service, and her commitment to helping others find their own paths from darkness to light. In this way, the letter that was written to comfort one grieving widow has become a source of inspiration and hope for countless others, proving that love truly is the force that moves us forward even in our darkest hours. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.